The end-time prophecy of the 10 kingdoms has already begun to be fulfilled, and the first step has been taken in Greenland. Yes, you heard right. While the world is distracted, the United States has just pushed for the formation of a new government in one of the most isolated regions on the planet, with military movements and declared plans for annexation. And all of this is directly linked to Daniel's ancient prophecy. In this video, you will discover why Greenland became the first territory involved in the prophesied division of kingdoms, how the world powers are taking a silent stance, and why this represents a clear sign that the world is about to enter its final phase. Stay with me until the end, because what is happening can no longer be ignored. But first, leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any more videos. The ignored signal in the north. While the world continues to be distracted by political scandals, financial crises, and conventional wars, something silent and frightening has begun to happen in the far reaches of the north. A forgotten territory covered by ice and silence is being fought over by the greatest powers on the planet. And almost no one noticed. Greenland has just hastily formed a new government, hours before the arrival of the Vice President of the United States. Coincidence? Definitely not. The landing of Air Force 2 at the Pituffik military base marked more than a diplomatic visit. It was a silent declaration of possession, of strategic dominance, that the North no longer belongs to chance, but to the elite that moves the hidden gears of global geopolitics. J.D. Vance waved to the cameras, gave a vague speech, but his words were loaded with clear intentions. And on the other side, Donald Trump reaffirmed, Greenland has to be ours. But why? What is so valuable about this immense landmass covered in ice? Why so much American interest right now? And why did this movement force the formation of a new local government, as if anyone knew what was coming? When we look at it with natural eyes, it seems like just another chapter in global diplomacy. But whoever sees spiritually, sees beyond. Greenland, positioned between Europe and America, close to the Arctic, is one of the most strategic points on the planet. It is directly linked to air security, space monitoring, and the control of maritime routes that will open up with polar melting. And more than that, today it is one of the few neutral territories still vulnerable to the direct influence of world powers. Therefore, American pressure was direct, quick, and successful. The new Greenlandic government was installed in response. But answer to what? To a military threat? A concern about security? Or would it be a way of politically preparing one of the kingdoms that, according to Daniel's prophecy, will be part of the final structure of the end-time world government? The Bible says that 10 kings will arise and give their power to the beast. They will not be kings, as in ancient times, but leaders, governments, alliances. Small or large, they will be part of the new division of global power. And if Greenland, until yesterday irrelevant to the world, has now become a priority, then what is happening there may be the first visible sign that the prophetic division of kingdoms has begun. Silent, strategic, and completely ignored by the majority. And that's exactly what we're going to delve into from now on, because in the next chapter, you will understand how this movement fits into a modern Cold War for the Arctic, involving China, Russia, and the United States. A hidden race which hides a much deeper spiritual reality. The race for the Arctic and the game of powers. The movement in Greenland is not isolated. It is a reflection of a global dispute that is silently growing. The race for the Arctic. Hidden beneath the ice, this region contains trillions in natural resources and sea passages that could reshape world trade. As the melting of the polar ice caps advances, new routes are opening, and with them, a new power board is being drawn. A board that involves the United States, Russia, and China. The Pituffik base in northwest Greenland is today one of the most strategic military installations in the United States. It functions as a space surveillance post, satellite launch point, and monitoring center for Russian and Chinese activities in the Arctic. By controlling this base, the USA has privileged access to the movement of the icy heart of the planet, being able to directly interfere in enemy operations and guarantee supremacy in regions that have not yet been fully explored. But this dispute goes far beyond technology or military positioning. We are talking about a silent struggle for global influence, where neutral territories, like Greenland, become coveted pieces. Russia, already established in several parts of the Arctic, frequently carries out military tests, expanding its presence with the construction of new bases. China, in turn, declares itself a nation close to the Arctic and seeks to establish diplomatic and economic alliances with governments in the region, including offering heavy investments in Greenland. Given this, the American presence with J.D. Vance, his entourage, and Trump's reaffirmation of the need to take Greenland is not patriotism. It is strategy. The United States knows that losing Greenland means handing over territorial advantage to the enemy, and so they are acting quickly, putting pressure on them politically, offering security and protection, and shaping local governments to align with their interests. But what does this have to do with prophecy? In Daniel 2, the feet of the statue representing the kingdoms of the world are made of iron and clay, an unstable mix of strength and fragility. These kingdoms would not be formed by traditional conquest, but by fragile, dependent alliances shaped by influence and diplomacy, exactly as we are seeing now. Small countries being pressured by powers, local governments being transformed into an extension of global interests, and alliances being forged not on the battlefield, but in private meetings, secret agreements and moves that most will never see. And the question that remains is inevitable. Is this race for the Arctic just about territory? Or are we seeing the beginning of the prophesied separation of kingdoms? In the next chapter, we will dive into Daniel's prophecy. You will understand in detail how the 10 kingdoms of the end arise, how they connect with the current time, and why all this indicates that the last stage before the rise of the Antichrist has already begun. Daniel and the prophecy of the 10 kingdoms. Millennia ago, a young man named Daniel, exiled in Babylon, was called to decipher a dream that not even the king himself could remember. What God revealed to Daniel at that moment changed history and continues to resonate today. The vision of the gigantic statue, described in chapter 2 of the book of Daniel, is one of the most impressive prophecies in the Bible. And what many don't realize is that we are living precisely in the final part of this statue, the feet of iron and clay. The statue had a head of gold, a chest of silver, a belly of bronze, legs of iron, and finally, feet made of a fragile mixture of iron and clay. Each part represented a world empire. Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome, and the feet represent the last political system before the coming of the kingdom of God. It is a divided, unstable system that cannot gain a foothold, but will still exercise global dominance for a brief time. And according to the prophecy, it will be during this phase that the stone, cut without the help of hands, will come from the heavens to destroy the structure, representing God's judgment and the establishment of his eternal kingdom. But Daniel didn't stop there. In chapter 7, he had a new vision, this time with 4 animals, symbolic representations of kingdoms. And at the end, he saw 10 horns appear on a terrible beast, a symbol of a system of power that precedes the appearance of the Antichrist. These 10 horns are 10 kings or kingdoms that will receive authority for a specific time and then hand over their power to the beast. The same structure of feet of iron and clay reappears here, only now with darker details. It is a divided but coordinated power about to be centralized under a single world leader. And this is where everything connects. The world today is no longer unified like the great empires of the past. Instead, we see fragile alliances, economic blocs, military pacts and territories being shaped by diplomatic pressure. Small governments like Greenland's may seem insignificant, but in a divided global system, every territory is strategic. And behind the geopolitical movements, there is invisible engineering happening, shaping the 10 power blocks that will give rise to the last global configuration before the final chaos. Greenland, by forming a new government under international pressure, may have just been integrated into this structure. It may just be one of the first reorganized kingdoms, a discrete step towards a gigantic prophetic plan. And the most alarming thing, almost no one is seeing this happen. In the next chapter, we will analyze how the political reconfiguration of Greenland fits directly into this prophetic framework, and why this small territory could be the key to one of the 10 kingdoms of the apocalypse. The government of Greenland and the prophetic map. The sudden formation of a new government in Greenland may seem like just a diplomatic detail to those observing with natural eyes, but for those who understand the behind-the-scenes of the end times, this event carries spiritual weight and prophetic significance. And the most curious thing, everything happened just hours before the American delegation arrived on the island. A quick, almost silent movement that revealed much more than was disclosed. Under pressure from the United States, and in the face of the visit of Vice President J.D. Vance, Greenland reconfigured its political landscape. The parties rushed to form a coalition, signaling to the world, and especially to Washington, that they were ready to negotiate. This gesture may seem like a sign of autonomy, but in fact, it demonstrates the fragility of a small territory in the face of the planet's dominant forces. Exactly as Daniel's prophecy describes, clay and iron coexisting, but without mixing. Denmark, technically responsible for Greenland, was accused by Vance of failing to protect the island from Russian and Chinese attacks, and in this power vacuum, the United States quickly offered its protection. But what lies behind this security curtain is actually a strategic occupation disguised as aid. One of the most common methods of prophetic control, dominion without war, influence without declared imposition, the taking of territory under the label of peace. This dynamic fits perfectly into Revelation 17:12, where John describes, "The 10 horns that you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received kingdoms, but they will receive authority as kings for 1 hour along with the beast." In other words, they are leaders who emerge with temporary authority, often without a throne or traditional nation, but with enough power to sustain the beast's system. This points to a global reorganization where small governments, emerging alliances and political blocs gain a fundamental role in the structure of the end. Greenland, despite being isolated and small, may be becoming one of those pieces. One of the uncrowned kings who will participate in handing over authority to the beast. A territory shaped under influence, aligned with the interests of one of the global powers, ready to integrate the new geopolitical order. The map of the world is no longer divided solely by national borders. It is now being redrawn by influence, control, and submission. And while this happens, the population's eyes continue to be focused on distractions. Most don't see it, many don't believe it, but the signs are there. The emergence of this new government is just one of many movements that are reorganizing Earth's spiritual chessboard. And in the next chapter, we'll go even deeper. The Pituffik military base, a modern watchtower that may be serving as the control point of the prophetic north, where the physical and spiritual worlds silently intersect. The watchtower in Frost, Pituffik, and the Spirit War. In the icy heart of Greenland, almost invisible to the world, there is a military base with an almost unpronounceable name, but with a prophetic role impossible to ignore. Pituffik. Also known as Thule Space Base, this installation is not just another point of American military presence. It can literally be a prophetic watchtower at the ends of the earth. Throughout biblical history, God has always used strategic points in geography to fulfill his purposes. Mountains, deserts, city gates, temples. Each location carried a spiritual meaning. And the enemy, knowing this, always tried to occupy these places with opposite purposes. Territory matters. He is more than earth. He is portal, positioning, spiritual influence. The Pituffik base was built during the Cold War, and to this day it serves as a surveillance point for air and orbital space. It monitors satellites, detects ballistic launches, and serves as the US's advanced eye over the Arctic, Europe, and even Russia. But beyond the technological aspect, what we are seeing there is the fulfillment of an ancient principle, that of monitoring the skies in times of alert. In Jeremiah 1:14, the prophet hears, "Evil will pour out from the north on all the inhabitants of the earth." And in Ezekiel 38, Gog, the leader of Israel's enemy nations, comes from the far north. The north in the scriptures is often presented as the point from which judgment, attack, and the enemy will come. But it is also the place where the sentries are placed. God sets up watchmen, atalayas, voices, and when we look at Pituffik from this perspective, it becomes more than a base. It becomes a symbol of spiritual warfare about to manifest. The fact that the American delegation limited itself to this base, avoiding the civilian areas of Greenland, is symbolic. They went straight to the command point, and there, in front of the military, J.D. Vance made statements that seem simple but carry hidden messages. The security of the world depends on it. America must lead, or others will fill the gap. Does this sound like diplomacy? Perhaps, but it sounds even more like spiritual positioning in front of a territory that will be crucial in the final battle. Pituffik is a sentry, a place that observes the heavens and watches over the kingdoms. And in the spiritual world, this vigil is already active. War is approaching, not with bombs, but with control, with domain, and with the silent advancement of the system that will govern before the return of Christ. And in the next chapter, we will expose how this advance is already being disguised as world peace, and why the false sense of security is the last sign before the destruction foretold by the scriptures. The prophetic clock, marking 0001. Imagine a heavenly clock set by God from the beginning, a clock that not only measures human time, but the prophetic cycles of history, a clock that ticks forward even when the world isn't watching. Now imagine that clock showing 0001, 1 minute to midnight, a sigh before the turn. This is exactly where we are. Each event described so far is not random. The formation of a new government in Greenland, the visit of the American delegation, the speeches about world peace, the military deployment in the Arctic, all of these are synchronized movements like the hands of a clock aligning for the final touch. These are not just political actions, they are spiritual statements. The prophecy is clear. Before the arrival of Antichrist, 10 kings will receive power for a brief time. They will not be ancient emperors nor absolute monarchs. They will be modern leaders, temporary governments, strategic alliances, all connected. And after this division, the 8th king will emerge, the one who will dominate all others, the last ruler before the end. The clock has passed the warning minutes. We are no longer in the rumor phase. Now are the facts. These are the real movements. It is the visible fulfillment of texts that seem distant, but that are now taking shape before our eyes. And while most ignore it, The sky is screaming. The signals are being given. Time is running out. Therefore, this is not just a conclusion, it is an urgent call. It's time to watch. It's time to pray. It's time to sanctify yourself, to disconnect from distraction and dive into the truth. It's time to open your eyes, abandon conformity, and prepare spiritually for what's to come. Because the next hour could change everything. Make no mistake, the system of the end will not come suddenly. He's already here, and each new alliance, each new government, each new military base, each international treaty, all of this is part of the construction of a prophesied throne. A throne that, for a brief time, will rule with deception, seduction and control. But God is raising up the watchmen, those who don't bend, those who warn, those who remain standing, even when darkness tries to dominate. If you are here until now, it is because you are part of this generation. Share this message, sign up now, and get ready for the next video, because if the clock has already marked Nururoja 1, what comes next cannot be ignored. The false peace and the speech of the end. During his visit to the Pituffik base, Donald Trump did not mince words. When declaring, "We're not talking about peace for the United States, we're talking about world peace." At first glance, this statement sounds like another diplomatic gesture, a statesman's speech. But for those who know the scriptures, these words sound like a prophetic echo from the past, a clear sign of what was announced as the prelude to destruction. In 1 Thessalonians 5:3, the Apostle Paul is emphatic. When they say, "There is peace and security," then sudden destruction will come upon them. This text is a warning. He reveals to us that before the final judgment, there will be an illusory climate of global stability, a false feeling that everything is going well, that finally the nations found a common path, that wars and conflicts were replaced by treaties and diplomacy. But this will all be a trap, a smokescreen hiding the coming chaos. This is the scenario that is beginning to form. The peace Trump talks about is not the peace of God, it is the peace of the system. A peace that demands vigilance, submission, and control. A peace that justifies forceful actions as protection. A peace that in practice paves the way for the silent advancement of global domination. Territories are taken without declared war. Structures are shaped in silence, and the people, distracted and relieved by the promise of security, do not realize that they are being led straight into a system that they will no longer be able to resist. This is exactly how the scriptures describe the spirit of Antichrist. In Daniel 8:25, it is written that he will destroy many who live carelessly for his policy of peace. In Revelation 13, the beast appears as someone who seduces with words, who conquers with his mouth, who enchants the kings of the earth before devouring them, not with screams, but with whispers, not with force, but with promises. Trump's speech is not isolated. He represents the voice of a system in formation, a system that presents itself as an answer to collective fear, as a solution to conflicts between nations, as a last resort to save the planet from collapse. But all this is just the veneer of a dark spiritual empire that has already begun to rise from the rubble of the old order. And the question that cannot be ignored is, are we experiencing the last silence before the great storm? Could this be the deceptive calm that precedes the greatest spiritual and geopolitical collapse in history? In the next chapter, we will answer this question clearly. Because if peace is false and the system is forming, then you need to understand how to prepare for what comes, and more than that, how to resist. The final awakening. Prepare for what comes. Now that everything has been exposed, it is impossible to continue looking at events as if they were just politics, strategy, or diplomacy. What is happening in Greenland is prophetic, it's spiritual. It is a visible part of something that is already being carried out in the invisible. And only those who have Their spiritual eyes open will see it. You notice the signs. You feel like there's something different in the air. A growing tension, an acceleration of events, a silent reordering of the world. And this feeling is not for nothing. It is the spirit warning the watchful. The time is being fulfilled. What seemed distant now knocks on the door. The 10 kingdoms are being organized. Nations are taking a stand. And the structure that will support the last world government is already being assembled. One piece at a time. Greenland was just one of the first to be touched, but it won't be the last. Soon other territories, governments and alliances will emerge, some small, other giants, all connected, all aligned to the final plan. The beast will not arise in a vacuum. It will be enthroned in a system that is already ready, structured and accepted. And when that moment arrives, whoever is asleep will no longer have time to react. Therefore, this is the time of final awakening. You can no longer live as if nothing is happening. You can no longer ignore the signs. God is giving discernment to those who seek, but it is also allowing many to remain blind because they have chosen to love comfort over truth. If you've come this far, it's because God is calling you, calling for surveillance, calling to holiness, calling to delve into scripture like never before, calling to abandon the distractions of the world and prepare spiritually, emotionally, mentally for what is to come. Because it won't be easy. But those who stand on the rock will not be shaken. You need to understand what is happening, but you also need to position yourself. Information without preparation does not save. Knowledge without action does not protect. This is the time to raise your eyes like a sentry on the walls and watch. And if the division of the kingdoms has already begun, then the next step will be even more impactful. In the next videos, we will reveal which territories are being shaped. Right now, to be part of this new prophetic order, we will show how technology, religion, and economics are being connected to shape humanity's last empire. Sign up now, activate the bell, and stay with us, because what comes next will shock the entire world. If you have felt in your spirit that something big is happening and can no longer be ignored, then this channel is for you. Here, we don't just reveal the signs, we connect the events of the world with the prophecies of the word. So sign up now, activate the bell, and don't just watch this video, marathon the next ones, because each piece is falling into place quickly and the truth needs to be fully understood. Don't wait for the system to reveal the truth. The truth has already been written and it is being fulfilled now. See you in the next video, because the end has already begun.